the night had fallen gently over the small African village, wrapping it in a quiet, mysterious calm. The sky was deep black, scattered with countless stars that shimmered like tiny candles lit by heaven itself. It was Christmas Eve, and although the village was poor, the air was filled with a strange and beautiful excitement. Small mud houses stood in rows, their roofs decorated with handmade ornaments, dried leaves, colored cloth, and tiny wooden stars. From a distance, the soft sound of drums mixed with quiet Christmas songs, sung in low, hopeful voices. Children laughed near a small fire, their breath visible in the cool night air, while elders sat together, sharing stories and memories. But away from the lights and laughter, at the edge of the village, stood a lonely figure. He was a magician. No one knew his real name. Some called him the Christmas magician, others whispered that he was cursed. He wore an old red cloak, torn at the edges, and in his hand was a simple wooden staff, smooth, dark, and covered with strange symbols. His face carried lines of hardship, but his eyes held something rare, quiet kindness mixed with deep sadness. As the church bell rang once, then twice, the magician slowly raised his staff. A faint golden glow appeared at its tip, lighting the ground beneath his feet. The wind suddenly grew still, as if the night itself was watching him. People in the village felt it. Some stopped singing. Some children turned their heads toward the darkness. A feeling passed through the air, something magical, something different from any Christmas they had ever known. The magician whispered softly, not a spell, but a prayer. "This Christmas," he said, "let magic be more than illusion. Let it heal hearts." The glow faded, and once again, the night was silent. The villagers did not yet know it, but this Christmas would change their lives forever. A story of magic, sacrifice, and hope was about to begin, on the most mysterious Christmas night Africa had ever seen. As Christmas Eve moved closer to midnight, the village grew brighter with small fires and handmade lanterns. Families gathered together, sharing what little food they had, warm bread, roasted roots, and sweet tea. Children held simple gifts made from cloth or wood, smiling as if they were treasures of gold. But the magician stood apart. He watched from a distance, leaning on his wooden staff. His stomach was empty, his cloak thin, and his pockets held nothing but dust. Unlike others, he had no gifts to give, no food to share, and no family waiting for him. Christmas, for him, had always been a reminder of loss. Years ago, he too had a home. He remembered a small hut, laughter, and a child's voice calling him father. Those memories now felt like shadows, real, but far away. Magic had not saved them. Poverty had taken everything. A group of children noticed him standing alone. One brave little girl walked closer, her eyes shining with curiosity. "Mister," she asked softly, "where's your Christmas gift?" The magician smiled, but it was a painful smile. "I have none," he replied. "Not for myself, and not for anyone else." The children looked at each other, confused. How could a magician have nothing? Weren't magicians supposed to create wonders out of thin air? That night, the village chief approached him. His voice was calm but firm. "People expect magic," the chief said. "They believe you can make this Christmas special." The magician lowered his head. "Magic without love is empty," he said quietly. "And tonight, I have nothing left to give." As the church bell rang midnight, the magician turned away from the celebration. Snow like ash from the fire floated in the air, landing on his cloak like falling stars. In that moment, he felt smaller than ever, just a poor man with a stick, standing in the shadow of Christmas joy. Yet deep inside his heart, something stirred. The magician walked slowly toward the old baobab tree at the center of the village. Its wide branches stretched across the sky like open arms, as if welcoming anyone who came with a heavy heart. Beneath the tree, a small fire burned quietly, its light dancing on the magician's tired face. He sat down, closed his eyes, and rested his staff on the ground. For the first time in many years, he did not think about spells or tricks. Instead, he thought about Christmas, the meaning behind it. Giving. Forgiveness. Hope. things no magic could force into existence. I have spent my life trying to change the world with power, he whispered. But tonight, I have nothing. A soft sound broke the silence. Footsteps. An old woman from the village approached him, carrying a small bowl of food. It was barely enough for one person. She placed it beside him without saying a word. The magician opened his eyes, surprised. You should keep this, he said. I can survive without it. The woman smiled gently. Magic is not in your hands, she said. It is in what you choose to do. Her words struck his heart harder than any spell. Slowly, the magician stood. He lifted his staff, not to impress, not to entertain, but with sincerity. He pointed it toward the sky and spoke softly. Let this magic serve love. A warm light flowed from the staff, spreading like a gentle sunrise. It did not burn or explode. Instead, it felt peaceful. The cold air grew softer. The fire under the tree burned brighter without consuming more wood. Villagers gathered, watching in silence. Children held their breath. Even the elders felt their hearts lighten. But the magician noticed something strange. Every time the light grew stronger, he felt weaker. Magic powered by kindness demanded a price. Still, he did not stop. Because for the first time, his magic was not about showing power. It was about sharing the spirit of Christmas. And deep within the crowd, a small hungry child watched him with hopeful eyes, unaware that he would soon change everything. From behind the crowd, a small child stepped forward. His clothes were thin, torn at the edges, and his feet were bare against the cold ground. His eyes were large and tired, the eyes of a child who knew hunger better than toys. The magician noticed him immediately. Come closer, the magician said gently. The child hesitated, then walked toward the glowing light beneath the baobab tree. The villagers whispered among themselves. Some recognized the boy, an orphan who lived alone after losing his parents to illness. What do you want for Christmas? The magician asked. The child looked down, ashamed. His voice was barely a whisper. I don't want toys, he said. I just want to eat, and for my little sister to stop crying. A deep silence fell over the village. The magician's hands trembled. He had created illusions before, birds of light, floating flames, but this was different. This was real need. He closed his eyes and placed his staff on the ground between them. For the first time, he said softly, I will ask magic to serve someone else. The staff glowed brighter than ever. The light wrapped around the child like a warm blanket. Slowly, a simple loaf of bread appeared in the magician's hands, fresh, warm, real. Gasps filled the air. The magician broke the bread and handed it to the child. Then something even more powerful happened. The bread did not grow smaller. Each piece remained whole, enough for more. Tears rolled down the magician's face. The child smiled for the first time in months. Villagers rushed forward, bringing bowls, plates, and cups. The bread was shared, and no one went hungry that night. Laughter replaced fear. Hope replaced doubt. But as joy spread, the magician fell to his knees. The light faded. His breathing grew heavy. Magic had given life, but it was taking his strength. Still, he smiled. Because on that Christmas night, the first true miracle had happened, not because of power, but because of compassion. The village had never seen anything like this before. People stood in small circles, holding pieces of warm bread in their hands, staring at the magician with wide, unbelieving eyes. This was not a trick. This was not an illusion. It was real. Whispers turned into voices, and voices turned into prayers. Maybe he is blessed, one elder said quietly. No, another replied, shaking his head. He is giving himself for us. The magician struggled to stand, leaning heavily on his staff. His face was pale, his breath slow, but his eyes shone brighter than ever. For the first time, the villagers did not see a strange outsider. They saw a man with a heart full of sacrifice. A young man stepped forward, removing his coat and placing it gently over the magician's shoulders. "You have always stood alone," he said. "Tonight, you are one of us." More people followed. Someone brought water. Another offered a small stool. Children sat close, no longer afraid. Even the village chief bowed his head in respect. The magician raised his hand slowly. "Do not believe in me," he said weakly. "Believe in what we can become together." The fire burned higher, and the village felt warmer, not because of the flames, but because something had changed inside their hearts. People began sharing what little they had. One family brought fruit. Another brought soup. A mother hugged her child a little tighter. Christmas songs grew louder, stronger, filled with new meaning. But deep inside the magician, a storm was forming. He could feel it. Magic like this demanded balance. The more love he released, the more darkness pushed back. High above the village, clouds gathered, blocking the stars. A cold wind returned, carrying a strange, heavy silence. An elder looked toward the sky, worried. "This night is not over," he whispered. And the magician knew the truth. The greatest test was yet to come. The wind grew colder, cutting through the village like a warning. The fire under the baobab tree flickered violently, and the warm glow that once filled the air began to fade. Children moved closer to their mothers. Even the drums fell silent. The magician felt it immediately. "This is the price," he whispered to himself. From the edge of the village, a dark shadow began to rise, not a creature of flesh, but of fear. It was the weight of greed, pain, and hopelessness that had lived in the village for years. Magic born from love had awakened everything buried in darkness. The villagers panicked. "Do something," someone shouted. "Use your magic," another cried. The magician stepped forward, but his legs trembled. He raised his staff, yet no light came. For the first time that night, magic failed him. "I cannot fight darkness with power," he said, his voice shaking. "Only with truth." The shadow grew larger, feeding on fear. People began to argue, to blame each other. Old wounds reopened. The miracle of the bread felt far away. Then the poor child stepped forward, the same child who had been fed first. "Stop," the child said bravely. "He already gave us everything." The words cut through the noise like a blade of light. Slowly, the villagers fell silent. One by one, they joined hands. A mother forgave a neighbor. Two brothers embraced after years of anger. Tears fell onto the dry ground. The shadow screamed, not in rage, but in weakness. A small glow returned to the magician's staff, not bright, not powerful, but steady. The darkness began to dissolve, breaking apart like smoke in the morning sun. The magician collapsed, exhausted, but smiling. The test was over. Christmas magic had survived, not through. The village stood quietly as the last traces of darkness disappeared into the night. The wind softened, the clouds slowly moved away, and the stars returned, brighter than before. It felt as if the sky itself was smiling. The magician lay on the ground beneath the baobab tree, weak but alive. Villagers gathered around him, not as spectators, but as family. Someone placed a folded cloth under his head. Another held his hand. "You saved us," the village chief said softly. The magician opened his eyes and shook his head. "No," he replied. "We saved each other." He slowly sat up, using his staff for support. The children watched closely, their faces filled with wonder. "All my life," the magician began, "I believed magic was about control, making things appear, bending the world to my will. But tonight, I learned the truth." He looked at the poor child, now eating peacefully beside his sister. "True magic is giving, even when you have nothing left." The villagers listened, their hearts heavy with understanding. Many realized how often they had ignored one another's pain. How often they had waited for miracles instead of becoming one. One by one, people stepped forward. A farmer offered seeds for the orphan children. A woman promised to cook for those without food. A young man volunteered to rebuild broken homes. No glowing lights appeared. No spells were spoken. Yet this was the strongest magic of all. The magician felt warmth return to his body, not from power, but from love flowing back to him. His breathing steadied. His hands no longer trembled. Christmas songs rose again, this time filled with tears and laughter together. The village was no longer poor in spirit. As dawn approached, the magician smiled. He knew his role was ending. The final miracle would not come from his staff, but from the hearts he had awakened. The first light of Christmas morning slowly rose over the African village. Golden sunlight touched the rooftops, the trees, and the faces of people who had not slept, yet felt more alive than ever before. Birds sang as if they, too, were celebrating. Children ran through the village laughing, their hunger forgotten. Fires were lit again, not for warmth alone, but to cook together, to share together. The village looked the same, yet everything had changed. Beneath the great baobab tree, the magician stood quietly. His staff no longer glowed. The symbols carved into it had faded, leaving behind plain, simple wood. He looked at it and smiled. "My magic is finished," he whispered. The poor child and his sister ran toward him, holding a small handmade gift, a bracelet woven from grass and colored thread. "For you," the child said. "So you don't forget us." Tears filled the magician's eyes. He knelt and hugged them gently. "I will never forget," he promised. The villagers gathered for one final moment. The village chief stepped forward. "You came to us as a stranger," he said. "But you leave as a blessing." The magician raised his hand, not in spell, but in farewell. "Remember this Christmas," he said. "Do not wait for magic. Be the magic." As he turned to walk away, something extraordinary happened. Where his footsteps touched the ground, small green plants began to grow, signs of new life, new beginnings. No one followed him. They understood his journey was complete. The sun rose higher. Christmas morning had arrived. And from that day on, the village was known for something greater than miracles. It was known for kindness. For unity. For a magic that never faded. Because the greatest Christmas gift was not created by spells. It was created by the human.